All right, get ready because today in this explainer, we are setting the stage for a truly mind-bending journey. We're traveling way, way out, far beyond our own solar system to the blistering metallic world of a planet called Chalcopyris. Our mission? To discover and try to wrap our heads around an entirely new, heavy metal life form that literally rewrites the fundamental rules of existence. We're talking about the Cuprans.
But, before we even meet them, we have to ask ourselves a pretty tough question. Are we alone in our carbon bias? For centuries, humanity has looked out into the stars with this massive, underlying assumption. We've just kind of convinced ourselves that complex, sentient life absolutely requires the fragile, watery, carbon-based framework of Earth's biology.
Okay, let's dive into this underlying assumption, which scientists call carbon chauvinism. It's this singular, fundamental bias that complex life can only arise from the carbon atom and its natural affinity for water. We've long thought carbon's unique ability to form long molecular chains was the absolute only architectural blueprint for life out there. But when a deep space probe actually pierced the atmosphere of Chalcopyris, it completely shattered centuries of terrestrial arrogance. It revealed a biosphere built entirely on copper.
Section 1. Beyond carbon chauvinism, the primordial forge.
So think about terrestrial biology for a second. On Earth, carbon is the backbone of life, right? It makes up our soft lipid bilayers, our DNA strands. But copper? Copper doesn't easily chain together like that. So Cupran biology uses something called coordination chemistry instead. Imagine copper acting as the structural bricks, binding to other molecules to create these incredibly complex metal-organic frameworks. In this alien biology, carbon and nitrogen, the stuff we're made of, are basically just the mortar holding those copper bricks together.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how they store genetic info. Because they don't have DNA, their genetic code relies on this wild quantum mechanical phenomenon called the John Teller effect. Basically, their copper complexes physically shift shapes, like going from square planar to tetrahedral to octahedral. Their genetic code isn't just a flat sequence, it's physically stored in shifting, three-dimensional geometric states. That makes it infinitely denser than human DNA. It's like comparing an old floppy disk to a quantum supercomputer.
Section 2. Building a metal human. Molecular architecture. This whole setup reveals a fundamental shift in how life can actually be powered. We humans rely on the Krebs cycle, right? We break down carbon sugars to produce ATP. We burn chemical energy. But Cuprans? They are essentially living, breathing batteries. Their cells act as literal galvanic cells. They don't burn calories. They consume raw mineral ores and discharge voltage. They literally physically store electrical charge in biological capacitors inside their bodies.
And because of that incredible internal electrical and chemical activity, their biology demands some pretty extreme conditions. Their normal resting body temperature sits right at 110 degrees Celsius. That's about 230 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a blistering thermal baseline for sure, but it is absolutely crucial to maintain the activation energy for all that internal copper chemistry to keep ticking.
And then there's the sheer mass of a heavy metal life form. I mean, copper is incredibly dense. To put that into perspective, an average adult male Cupran, standing roughly 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighs an astonishing 450 kilograms. That is nearly 1,000 pounds packed into a normal human-sized frame. No way, right?
So, to support that massive 1,000-pound frame, a brittle calcium phosphate skeleton like ours just wouldn't cut it. It would snap. A Cupran skeleton is made of biogenically precipitated bronzes and brasses, and their muscles? They aren't slow-sliding actin and myosin like ours. They are electroactive polymers that contract instantaneously when shocked with electricity. This gives them unbelievable physical strength. They could easily crush a solid steel beam like an empty soda can. But there's a catch. Because doing that requires vast amounts of electrical energy, they have to take frequent rests to recharge those biocapacitors.
Section 3. The solid-state brain, sentient circuitry.
The difference in processing power here is just staggering. Our human nerves are wet, chemical, and comparatively really slow, maxing out around 120 meters per second. But a Cupran's nervous system, it's a literal wiring schematic of solid-state copper coaxial cables. Because they use actual electron flow, their reaction times operate at significant fractions of the speed of light. To a Cupran, human movement would look comically slow. Actually, scratch that. We'd look like we were frozen in time. But this unbelievable speed comes with a fatal flaw.
Their solid-state quantum computer brains are highly vulnerable to localized electromagnetic pulses, which would induce massive, fatal seizures.
This metallic biology also completely changes how they experience the universe around them. Their eyes are solid biological lenses made of cuprite crystals. This makes them totally blind to red and yellow light, but they can see deep into the UV and X-ray spectrums. Imagine looking up at the night sky and seeing it ablaze with X-ray radiation. They also possess magnetoreception, meaning they feel the planet's magnetic north and south as actual physical pressures on their bodies. Oh, and they have electroperception. They can physically feel nearby heartbeats through walls and even sense the microscopic electrical spikes of deception if someone tries to lie to them. You literally cannot lie to a Cutran.
Section 4. Blue blood and bronze. Breathing the blue blood. So the crucial point is how they handle oxygen. We use iron-based hemoglobin, which makes our blood red and happily transports oxygen everywhere. Cuprans, on the other hand, use copper-based hemolymph, a glowing, luminescent sapphire blue fluid. But here's the problem. Oxygen causes copper to rust, so their blood doesn't just casually transport oxygen, it aggressively sequesters it to protect their internal organs from oxidizing. If a Cupran gets cut and bleeds, that blue blood reacts violently with the air, instantly flash oxidizing into a rock-hard green scab. They literally bio-weld their own wounds closed.
Now, surviving this hostile environment drove an extraordinary evolutionary journey. Let's look at the timeline. 4 billion years ago, they began as these microscopic geometric crystal entities in boiling acidic oceans. As they eventually transitioned to land, the immense planetary gravity forced them to evolve those heavy, bronze bipedal skeletons just to stand upright. As early apex predators, they actually used their biocapacitors as literal biological tasers to hunt and stun prey. Fast forward, and eventually that raw power receded to make way for fine motor control, leading to the brutalist bedrock cities they inhabit today as walking, living forges.
Section 5. A civilization of voltage. Brutalist architecture.
Cuprans completely bypass the Stone Age. Since their bodies run at 110 degrees Celsius and they can literally discharge electricity from their fingertips, early Cuprans could smelt raw metals with their bare hands. Today, they live in these brutalist, highly conductive cities carved right into dense basalt, environments of extreme heat and deafening acoustic resonance. They speak using metallic throat reeds that sound like grinding tectonic plates. But if they're in a crowded room, they can communicate completely silently via low-frequency radio waves. It's like a silent hive-like data transfer. And if they get sick, well, their doctors act way more like biological mechanics. They use grinders, welding arcs, and targeted electrical currents to jumpstart failing biocapacitors.
Let's move on and see how this all builds together into their most incredible mechanical wonder, reproduction. A mated pair physically links their bioelectrical fields for several days, passing a continuous current to form a seed core in the mother's heavily insulated crucible womb. Then, over a massive 3 Earth-year gestation period, the mother consumes raw heavy metals to literally electroplate the fetus layer by layer. When it's finally born, the infant is glowing white-hot from friction. The parents immediately submerge it in a bath of liquid ammonia. As the infant cools, it emits a localized EMP, the spark of the machine roaring to life, taking its first true electrical breath. It's just wild.
It is absolutely awe-inspiring. We are soft, fragile creatures of water, powered by the slow burning of sugars. They are heavy, nearly indestructible beings of the forge, operating at the actual speed of electricity. Yet, whether powered by water or powered by voltage, if we were to stand face to face with them, we would see the exact same universal software behind those cuprite eyes. Sentient curiosity. Life, it turns out, is just the unstoppable current that inevitably flows through the path of least resistance, which forces us to ask, if biology is truly just a suggestion and chemistry is merely a tool, what other unimaginable forms of life are currently looking back at us from the stars?
Please like and subscribe.